for the sake of time, I will cut to the point. I don't think I can do better than the people who have come before me. There were some questions about why transit workers and not everyone. I think that's been a concern that I've heard a number of times. In various different spots you've heard why, but I think a fundamental key point to remember is that oftentimes our transit workers are in situations where they are in enclosed environments with passengers who are in enclosed environments, and they are the ones that are expected to be able to deal with the situation. Why, when they are in their seat, are they protected, but when they go to interact or maybe to intervene, they are not? Sometimes it takes the transit police a while to get to the scene. As the operator is supposed to flee their bus, and leave the passengers on there. It's also a matter of passenger safety as well. They don't have any. They can't just flee. If you're at a hospital or you're in a library or you're in another circumstance, if trouble happens, most people turn around and head the other direction. On a bus, you can't do that. I think it's also important to note that passengers do look at our transit employees as figures of authority, and they provide security, feelings of safety, feelings of comfort on our system. If our system doesn't feel safe, people won't ride. If our operators don't feel safe, they won't drive. So So another thing is, really quickly, is I put up on OLIS a Transit Advisory Committee for Safety report, which will Harry Supporta from our staff was on the committee that helped develop this in 2014, looking at this issue, not just from raising the penalties, because raising penalties will by itself probably not really do anything. If somebody's angry and they don't know that it's any different to assault a police officer, assault a transit employee than it is to assault a passenger, we have to do a lot of other things. And so in this report, it lists a number of things to do. One is we're implementing training to help operators diffuse these situations, be able to handle these situations in a safe way. We've trained half of our folks so far. We have the rest of them should be trained by the end of the year. We will be implementing a public awareness campaign, knowing that we can do what BART and some of these other transit agencies have done to be able to say, if you assault our operators, you will have a significant penalty, and the penalty is this. And I was just recently on BART, and I took a picture of the sign because I was like, holy moly. It was sitting right there, and it said, 5 years, and it makes you think, if you equate them with police officers, everybody knows you don't mess with police officers. Well, they're public safety. We're going to be looking at installing barriers and to help provide some shielding. And there are a number of other recommendations. But one of the things that the TRACS report does recommend is increasing penalties similar to what 2717 suggests. And that is to be able to link it up with the public awareness campaign and some of these other pieces. So in conclusion, I'm happy to take some questions to get to the data piece that I know is coming. The man to my right presented some of the data. I think I went and looked back at, over the last 2 years, how many potential cases would we have of this? How many folks would fall into the category of receiving a felony rather than a misdemeanor? And we're estimating it would be somewhere around 8, depending on how obviously the DA and what, that's 8 over 2 years. So it's not a massive number of folks. And frankly, from our perspective, I think the benefit of being able to say, don't touch our operators, you're going to get this, is more valuable than knowing we're going to be throwing a whole bunch of people in jail. That's just not a tenable situation. Regarding whether or not they need to be, how you narrow the definition, I think there are some ideas about how to do that, and I'm happy to talk about it. Representative Gorsuch did a great job of representing that. There are some ways of talking about uniformed employees. I know the HU has some ideas as well, so we should discuss that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I may ask a question, Aaron. I think putting up signs would be a fabulous idea. Do you have them up now? If you touch a bus driver, you're subject to a year in jail.
That is a good question.
There are signs up, but again, they're not put on the newer buses. So it talks about a fine. It also talks about a reward. I don't know how many people have actually got that reward, but there are signs. But again, those signs are the old law, which says if the bus is moving, then it's a felony, not the lesser law of interfering with public transportation. So it needs to be clear, but it's not.
Say that very clear right now. The sign could say, you touch this driver, you're subject to a year in jail. I mean,
Certainly.
That's not on the newer
that doesn't
buses.
need this bill to have that happen.
Chair Barker, Representative Green Lake, that is exactly true. Regardless of whether or not this bill passes, we are doing all these other things. So this is not a, if you don't give us this bill, we're not going to do these things. These things are already in process. Some of them have already happened. Some of them are in kind of continuous process. So I think what it does, though, is it does give us a little more teeth to be able to say, think of transit workers like police officers on the level of protection they deserve.
Mr. Vice Chair. It's wonderful.
Representative Williamson.
So, Aaron, do you release your data from TriMet on assaults? Is that a public number?
As far as I understand, we do, but I will look into that. Yeah.
Also, the prosecution rates, what the prosecution data looks like for these assaults and whether or not they're being prosecuted.
That is on my list as well.
And whether or not you can get information from BART about the impact of that change, if there was a similar change in the law in that system. So I'd be interested in all of those data points if you can get them to me.
Certainly.